good evening, everyone.
Oh,
How are we doing?
We're doing very well, thank you. And how's your good selves? Did you all enjoy your bank holiday weekend?
I was working.
That's no good.
I
You're
was
supposed to-
tidying the house.
Oh yeah. We understand that one. We
10
understand
years.
one.
It's every 10 years it gets done.
And it just so happened to be this weekend, right?
Well, Sue is coming today, and I gave myself a week, and I've done it in 4 days. So, you know,
4
basically,
days.
you know, yeah. Well,
4
basically,
days.
we've got about 3 or 4 years worth of cobwebs, various creepy crawlies, dead magazines. No.
Come on, I don't believe you. Angela, did you go sailing this weekend?
I certainly did. Yes, we had a lovely weekend at Rutland Water.
Oh, wow. Okay. Was
Yeah.
the wind kind?
Saturday was very blustery, very wet and very cold. So got a little bit hairy at times. But Sunday the sun came out. It was still quite windy, but it was a really good sail. We thoroughly enjoyed it.
They wouldn't be sailing, proper sailing, without a little bit of
Exactly.
exactly.
Wind.
So
Yeah.
wind. Okay. Sorry, people are joining as we speak. Sarah and Rachel have just joined us, and we will be joined by Richard Hagan, who was excellent guest on the Manufacturer of the Week program. I've possibly seen the clips I've been putting up on LinkedIn with him. Ram, good evening. Are you there?
I am indeed, yes. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Nick.
Evening.
Hello.
Hello,
Hi, Nick.
Rachel, Sarah, and
Hi.
Helen, I believe. Is Helen there? Yes, hello, Helen.
Hi.
How lovely to see you. By the way, I did put up on LinkedIn that this does stream live on YouTube simultaneously. I'm actually watching it as we speak, and it all seems to be working terribly efficiently. So if
That's
anybody
unusual.
says...
Don't jinx it, Nick. Don't jinx
What did you
it.
do? What did you do? Did you pay him?
Oh, I thought you were referring to me, not them. Okay. No, it's just that the if anybody ever says, well, I don't want, you know, I'd like to you know, check in on the conversation, but I'm not sure I actually want to take part. Well, of course, you know, the YouTube version is always there and ready. I'm waiting actually for Mark Weymouth and for Richard Hagan, because on the email I sent out earlier, I did say that I'd very much like people on the call to lead discussion. Doesn't need me to sort of set the agenda every time. And Mark has come back with a really great idea, which I won't spoil for you until he shows up. But also Steve Murphy's come up with some great ideas as well. So what's going to happen is that I'm hearing myself back. Is somebody unmuted? Sorry, I'm just getting some feedback. If you could all mute until you want to talk. Steve Murphy's come back with some great ideas as well. What I'm going to do, I've started a LinkedIn page for this event, and then what we'll do is I'll put up I don't know how to do it, but I'll find out how to do it, put up a schedule, and eventually we can start focusing more and more on particular topics, and I think that adds a sort of level of resonance to it that would attract more people. And obviously some people will say, well, I'm not interested in that topic that week, but I can see that next week it is something I want to really get my teeth into, and oh look, they've got quite an interesting speaker on it. So that's really how it's all going to go. I'm sitting here blathering. Oh, here's Mark. Hello. He's blathering until he showed up. And indeed,
Nick?
Mark is hello.
Why don't you set up an event on LinkedIn? So if you, I don't know whether I can share my screen.
Yeah, go for
Let
it.
me very quickly show you. So the homepage here. Okay, scroll down
Yeah.
on the left-hand side here. You'll see events here. Look,
Yeah.
click add. Click the name in. Put your group page in that you want. put the link through that's to your event, put what time it's on, and put any details in, and then create that, and it'll go live on LinkedIn.
I saw your demo of doing that using OBS the other day.
That was YouTube, yeah.
But that was okay.
Can
yeah,
you
but
make them as
did it.
repeating events? Can you make it
I
as like
think-
a weekly event? And then just
you
update
can.
individual ones with individual speakers or titles or something like that?
I think you can, but I'll have to have a look. But Nick, if you want help doing
That'd be
that, just
good.
give me a shout and I'll show you.
Oh, bless you, Adam. Thank you. That's lovely.
No problem.
Yeah, because I actually on the YouTube, I can the what do they call it, the keys and all of that, and the server addresses. You can replicate them each time. All you get is a different sharing, a different YouTube address. Mark, good evening. Hello, Mark.
Good evening. Hi,
Hello
sorry.
there. It's I've built you and hopefully our special guest up as being.
I'm glad I was on late then.
Is Toby with you?
He is. He's trying to connect now. Just 1 second. I'll just ask him how he's getting on. Otherwise, he can stand over my shoulder. Hang on a sec.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I've asked if Toby's going to join us. Toby is Mark's son, and responded to the request for to take the floor. And I thought, heck, why not? A young aspiring engineer. I mean, we need as many of those as possible. And so as soon as he's got himself hooked up, we'll get into that. And as I say, we are expecting. Better make certain. Is there anybody in the waiting room? This is the thing that drives me absolutely mad is, oh, hang on. Toby Weymouth is waiting. There he is. Good, I better park that so I can see anybody. Good evening, Toby. Can you hear me, Toby?
Yep, I can hear.
Jolly good show. Well, your dad on my screen is sitting right next to you. I suppose he's going to be somewhere else on other people's screens. But I was really thrilled to hear that you'd like to put a topic to the group to discuss. You had a question. First of all, very quick, and I know I'm putting you on the spot, but please, we're all good friends here. We, everything's very, very kind and gentle. Please just tell us just a little bit about yourself, so that we get a bit of context about what you've been up to and where you are in your studies, and then take us into the question, please.
Okay, so I'm studying my A levels at the moment. I'm doing maths, physics, and DT. And for the past 3 years, I competed in a Land Rover hosted competition, the 4x4 Challenge in schools, which the team I was in won twice at nationals, and then we went on to the world finals, winning research and development. I've got an Arkwright engineering scholarship, and now I judge for F1 in schools and 4x4 in schools. I think you're muted.
Thank you very much indeed. That's very impressive, Toby. Right, I think you're an aspiring engineer as well. Is that correct? You just haven't decided quite which discipline
I haven't
to follow.
decided on what discipline.
Okay. Well, would you like to ask your question and perhaps lead the topic?
Okay, so at the moment I'm writing an EPQ, which is a dissertation on a topic of interest for school. It's half the amount of UCAS points as an A level, so it's like an additional extra thing. And I've decided to focus on automation and its connection with employment and unemployment. So my question for the title is, how will extensive automation affect the unemployment rate? And I've been doing research, mainly secondary research, and I'm partway through writing the dissertation, and I was hoping to get an input from experts.
Learn to unmute myself. Who'd like to pick that one up? Adam, off you go.
The thing for me is, Toby, automation's been about for years, absolutely years. And I'm a lean background, so I was lean trained. So when we were looking at cellular manufacture and just-in-time manufacture, when we were loading machines, we wanted an auto eject. So that started off some parts of the automation. So we walked away from the machine, it auto eject, so we didn't have to take it out. We just come back around, load up, pick up and walk on. Then we get into automation, into loading. Now loading becomes a lot harder because of the intricacies that you might have to position things. So automation has been about for years, absolute years. Now, if we're talking displacement of humans and that side, you're getting more around into the robotics and that sort of automation. And there is, I suppose in a way, there's quite a big argument around it in saying autonomous vehicles, how many lorry drivers are going to be displaced? Taxis, how many are they going to be? Taxi drivers, how many are they going to be displaced? We've already got robots in the front of house of restaurants and things like that in Japan. So there's quite a big displacement. But my opinion is the skill set will shift, because there's going to be a skill set within the automation and the robotics and that side that is going to be needed. So it's going to create jobs and create growth. Now, I'll pass on to somebody else. I have been in conversations where we've actually been thinking around, as humans, we might employ robots at a future stage that will go to work for us. And based on that social scale, again, is how good your robot is, will again be your placement of in business. So it can get far reaching on the thoughts and the process around it. But automation has been about for years, for a long, long time. Anybody else?
Who else would like to take the floor on this? Okay, Helen, hello.
Hi, Toby. It's a massive subject, right? I suppose I would ask a sort of follow-up question is, why do you think we as human beings who have been working, in this world for thousands of years, what is automation in your context? And why do we introduce automation? What is it about what we do that says it's not efficient, it's not repeatable, it's error prone, whatever, it's boring? We want to do something more interesting with our brains than sit around tapping lids on Quality Street boxes. So we get a machine to do that, but then those people go on and do something much more interesting, knitting, I don't know, whatever. But I think there's a contextual thing. It's like, what is automate? Why do we want to automate? What do we want to automate? Is it about robotics? Is it just about doing something to make it repeatable? And what's the implication then for uniqueness and the opportunity for people who work in the industry to take absolute pride in the bit that they do have to do by hand? Because it is unique. It's not just done by a machine or an automated process. Or they can go and do something creative and make a handcrafted thing or something like that. So I think there's a different sort of context. It's not just about, for me, it's not just about we automate to make it cheaper and to get rid of people. We automate to take some of the graft away, or some of the, for me, the boring bits, I suppose. So that I can use my brain for something much more interesting and engaging and enthusiastic, and to make my stamp on something. If I'm making a product and I have to personalize it, I have to do some, hand screwing or hand assembly, because it is not quite as easy as just getting something else to do it, then I take pride in that. I can sort of polish it and say, I did that. That's mine.
Okay, anybody else got any thoughts on this? Please, Ram. Hi, good evening.
Good evening, everyone. Toby, that was a fantastic project you're working on. It's not an easy subject to tackle for experienced people, let alone a young person like you. So well done on that. So with regards to the extent to which automation is going to take our jobs away, I think we need to go back a few levels down to, number one, the basic human nature. None of us likes doing things repeatedly. Do you remember in school when teachers used to ask us to write something 100 times, like, write, I won't do this 100 times. We don't like doing repetitive things. That's human nature. But computers and machines They do repetitive things and they don't complain. What we are good at is the creative bits, is the ethical bits. It's making the right decision based on the information given to us. We are much better at that. So what will happen is jobs will not go, but the job roles will go. There's a big difference between jobs and job roles. Jobs is employment, job roles is the title people have. Those titles will disappear and make way for new titles, which means the responsibility will be on the workforce to go out there and skill themselves and upskill themselves and train themselves to do what they are required to do with things that are changing. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what's going to happen.
If I can just, so from the chair, suggest that, and Toby, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think in modern manufacturing, we've had some great sort of conceptual thoughts just now, but I'd like to narrow this down to the modern manufacturing production line, and how, for instance, in automotive, in aerospace, in anything really, and I'm sorry that Richard hasn't joined us yet. I'm looking to see if he's messaged me, because he makes vinyl wrap door products, but I mean, he's highly automated with robotic sprayers and all of that. And he's got some great stories to tell about that too. But I'm just wondering if the immediate manufacturing workforce is under, if you're asking if the immediate manufacturing workforce is under threat from automation, Toby, is that more specifically the question you're asking?
I'm focusing across the next 20 to 30 years, really, is what the other reports are, like the PwC reports and the Office for National Statistics reports are always going forward for about 20 to 30 years. So not just in the next few years.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. Angela, you've got some input.
Hi there, hi Toby. So I worked at Jaguar Land Rover and I worked in body in white. And obviously being down there on the shop floor, we had automation down there. And when you watch some of the robots flinging around car parts, half bodies, it's quite obvious that it's not a job that a human being could do. The same as when the robots will weld the parts together. It's not a job really for humans. I mean, there is weld spatter everywhere. It's a real horrible job and it's a horrible mess and it's hard work. So I think in that case, automation is a great thing. It really works. And it still allows, we still need the workforce down there on the floor, on the shop floor, to actually to load the parts into the grippers ready for the robots to pick up. So I don't think there is any loss of jobs by having an automated lines, particularly in that instance. I also read an article a couple of months ago talking about the medical industry, where what they were saying, sorry, and it's been some time since I read it, so I'll just quickly say. So where you're doing medical testing, where you've got lots of test tubes, hundreds and hundreds of test tubes that you have to, and you've got somebody physically droppers into each of those test tubes. And they were saying that one of the reasons that, producing medicines is so costly is because it's so labour intensive. They've now actually invented a robot that can do all this, that will cut the cost of medicine, but it still needs human interaction. So it doesn't mean that there's going to be a loss of jobs. And just quickly, the third point is automation within the office. So I've seen a lot recently, people talking about repetitive office tasks that you do, like entering information into a spreadsheet, and people are looking at using algorithms to do those repetitive tasks so that you haven't got to do them. So I think there's a huge spectrum. Automation covers a huge spectrum. It's not just about on the manufacturing shop floor, it's about offices and it's about, medicines. So it and you know, as Adam said, we've had it around us for years. You look at those little vacuum cleaners that you can set to go, and they'll just whiz round your house on their own. That's automation as well. So yeah,
fancy one of
There
those.
there was a fantastic, well, an interesting book that I read. I know somebody else has just put a book up. I don't know who it was. Was it? There's a book called Industries of the Future, done by Alex Ross. Now, I think Alex Ross was one of the American. He's an entrepreneur himself, big business leader himself. American bloke that was I think he was in Obama's sort of like camp and guiding around manufacturing, and they were talking around robots and automation on that side. And I think, like Angela was just saying there, we're already having operations done by robots. There's X amount of thousands a year done globally from robots. As I say, we've got restaurants and stuff like that. So it is coming. It's just that, as we've said before, the skill set and the job roles will be there. It's just that they've changed. They've upskilled. We're going to need different skills because if you imagine the infrastructure that we have to put in around connectivity, around, you know, if we take 5G, if we take everything like that, the infrastructure is massive. So it just creates everything. There's a knock-on effect.
Steve, you've got some thoughts you wanted to add, I believe.
Yeah, I think one point, picking up on what Angela said about the robots in a car factory, I think one thing you have to think about maybe, Toby, is that the robots in the car factory and that level of automation didn't arrive in one cycle of learning. So it all started off quite a long time ago with, you know, how can we make a tool that helps us to lug a crankcase around? So they put a bit of and it slowly built up over a period of time. So I think, and I think different production lines and different practices in different areas, like offices, will have different cycles of learning. So if you're trying to look for 20 to 30 years ahead, maybe you have to think about, well, what particular industry am I looking in, and what are the time periods of the cycles of learning within that industry, and how many will you go through to give some sort of prediction as to what might happen.
If I can just interrupt the conversation briefly to say that Richard Hagan has joined. Sorry, Richard, I think there was a password issue there. And Roy Howarth, who looks for the last minute to have been on a roller coaster inside his car, going upside down. Roy's from Airbus, Richard Airbus Defence and Space, and Richard is from Crystal Doors, who is subject of our Manufacturer of the Week program this week. And Simon, I'm not sure if you joined after Toby set the question, but Toby Weymouth, young gentleman there, is an aspiring engineer. His dad, Mark, is also on the call. And Toby was asking about the impact of automation on employment. And now that Richard's here, some of you may have seen the clip of the interview I showed, which was about what happened when Richard and Crystal Doors introduced a robot sprayer into their works. The chap who'd been doing it up until that moment, who has always been using a manual sprayer, and he just couldn't understand what automation was, what touchscreen technology was. A chap in his late 50s, a young spring chicken as far as I'm concerned, but he didn't understand all of that. So what Richard did was buy him a smartphone so he could take pictures of his grandchildren and gradually learn the concept of tapping on things, and it immediately got it. I just thought that was a wonderful story about how people can learn, but they don't necessarily learn the didactic way of just telling them. Later in life, you've got to have different ways. But the main point of the story is that this didn't replace the gentleman. Richard, I suspect he's gone on to do other things as well as tapping the robot screen, the painter screen.
The story actually gets a lot better. Unfortunately, just over a year ago, he had a stroke. and he went to hospital. And yeah, exactly. And we sort of said, no, we're leaving your job open. Don't worry about it. If you can get better, you can come back to work. We'll have you back. And amazingly, he did absolutely everything. He gave up his smoking. He gave up all his meats. He did every single exercise. And 6 months later, he came back part-time. Then had to have Fridays off fully to take his tablets and the rest of it. And now he's back full-time. It is an incredible story of sort of saying that people who are in the late 50s, which is where I am now on 50, I'm expected probably to last quite easily to be 70 and still working. And it's as somebody puts as a comment to your post, Nick, is Crystal Doors is like an academy. It's a teaching facility. Is constantly, you've got to be learning something new. Is you can't sort of say that, oh, I've done my apprentice, I've done my degree that I've got, or I've done my whatever, and that's it, I'm done, I'm finished. It is a case of, because technology is changing so quickly, we need to learn to adapt. And the car industry is the classic example, is the electric car isn't that much different, but the Germans have kept back and kept back and kept back. And even Jaguar, I know one of the directors of Jaguar, and they said it was a cottage industry, Tesla. And what's happened now? Now we've got the ID3 having to come through as fast as possible, Mercedes, BMW, all of them have to do it. And it is that change. And it's understanding how to get that culture through to employees. So thank you very much for the story, Nick.
Well, thank you, Richard. Toby, the floor is yours. Has any of this been of any assistance to you? And if not, what else would you like to learn?
It's definitely helped with my further understanding of automation other than the obvious production lines. So I've visited the mini plant in Oxford to see what their production line was like.
Amazing.
So when I talk about automation, that's what I mainly think of. And I've done a bit of work experience at a automation installer, which is a lot smaller scale. So I was just any information on if you know of automation replacing humans, or whether you think it will never get to the point that we'll get lots of people unemployed because they'll always be needed at somewhere else within the company or to operate the robots themselves.
I will point one thing. If you look at the food industry, there are food factories where there are hardly any people in there at all. And I think that is one industry where you can honestly say that there was an awful lot of manual work, and an awful lot of the manual workers haven't necessarily got anywhere else to go. So, I mean, I think there are sections of manufacturing where I think there has been a significant amount of unemployment, people just not finding a way back into other parts. Anybody else got any thoughts on that?
I think I believe KUKA have invented, I think they called it a human bot. So it's a robot that works alongside human beings.
Cobot.
Yeah.
It's called Cobot.
Promoting it quite hard with the social distancing that we're having to do now, and saying that it's absolutely ideal to work alongside humans because you're given that distance and you don't need to worry about the robots. Quite interesting, really. But Toby, I'll drop a link into a contact of mine, Kevin Shepherd, and he does automation with algorithms, so it might be worth having a chat with him as well.
Okay. Thank you.
And of course, one should point out that Toby and his dad have both got automation on their virtual backgrounds. So, Mark, can you just very quickly sum up for us where you are, what part you play in this, just so that anybody who hasn't met you before understands what role you play in industrial automation?
Okay, I'm glad you said in automation rather than my role in Toby. Okay, so my past decade has been selling and running companies, selling sensors into the automation industry. So in the UK, obviously that's largely dominated by automotive, and that was where my other half of a career once was, in automotive. So my exposure is in a very wide variety of manufacturing, everything from agriculture and its use of automation, manufacturing, aerospace, food and bev, etc. So across the whole range, and desperately trying to help the UK manufacturers become competitive by buying the right product and trying to get a bit more performance out of products, and trying to err a bit more towards Industry 4 and some cleverer use of data.
I'd like to welcome Mark Darlow very quickly. Mark, hello. Can you just introduce yourself? Give us a 30-second elevator pitch, so that, because I think most people know each other so far, but it'd be nice just to hear from you.
Yeah, sorry, I'm new to all this. It's and I came on a bit late, and apologise for that. I spent all my life in industry, and predominantly in ERP systems. I'm a production engineer by trade, but by profession rather, and moved into ERP. I was put onto this site by Heidi, I believe, or maybe it was Sarah. And she suggested I sit in and see what you have to add. So I'm just initially just sitting in and seeing what you've got to put in here. But my initial appearance, I came in a little bit late here, but so I'm not really fully up to speed with what's going on. But I live in the Yorkshire area, and we had Luddites here, and Luddites and saboteurs. So automation's been around for a long while, and people have always feared about losing their jobs because of automation, but other job opportunities come about and arise out of it.
I think that's basically the broad thesis, and as I've said, apart maybe from the food industry, where I think there has been a lot of job losses for people who probably would not have found other roles to play inside the manufacturing sector. Roy, I'd like to bring Roy Howarth in, because Roy, Airbus Space and Defence, is very involved in the Portsmouth area with young people, and getting them interested in careers in manufacturing. Roy, just wondered if you had any thoughts on what Toby's been saying so far, and anything you could offer him.
I'm not sure my link is that good, so that's why I've dropped the video. Can
you
like
hear Tom
me
Cruise
okay?
now? Yeah, I can hear you. Just look like Tom Cruise, which is fine.
Yeah, sorry about that. I don't know. I'm struggling to get a good connection for some reason. So yeah. So in terms of I'll say something about cobots actually, because I can't remember whether we showed to you when you came on site, but we've now got a cobot in operation. For those of you who don't know me, I work in defence space, and particularly in the space vision, and we manufacture a very number of very expensive satellites. Can you hear okay, or is it run up?
No, it's going, Roy. I'm sorry. I love that you joined us.
Let me reconnect. Let me reconnect.
Right. Sure thing. So I'll tell you what, Toby, if I may, I'd just like to move the conversation on a bit, because your father dropped me a note to say that actually we are in the UK desperately behind the curve when it comes to automation adoption by leading manufacturing economies. We may be the 8th or 9th largest manufacturing economy in the world, but something like 22nd in adoption. Is that right, Mark?
Yes, so we're 22nd, and if you consider China as that low labor country is 21st, so China has, I think, 50% higher adoption of robots than us. And if only I could pull the figures up in front of me. But if you bear with me, I will actually tell you some figures which I'm reading out of Toby's report as we speak, which are truly horrific. Gosh, Toby, I wish I knew where you put it.
We're below the European average for automating as well.
I suppose the big question to come from that, therefore, is does that automatically mean we are going to be hampered in terms of productivity? Richard Hagan, as somebody who has driven the productivity almost relentlessly at Crystal Doors, I'm imagining you're going to say that you are able to stay on par with the rest of the world. But do you see your competitors in your sector just inevitably dropping behind?
Yes. The difficulty that Crystal Doors has had is we're only a tiny company, 3 million turnover, where our competitors are the likes of IKEA, Howdens, Wren, the big boys who are producing millions of doors. So they're working 24/7, and we're just doing piecemeal as such. So the only way for us to get our unit costs down was to keep on pushing towards automation, and for us to be able to then have a growth spurt to get us to sort of twice the turnover was once again to get us to automation. What we had is the difficulty, going back to the spraying, is nobody wanted to work on a Saturday or Sunday, or would demand stupid prices to say that they'll come in on Saturday for this. Now we've got the robots, and once it's been programmed, which was done at the very early days, we're just running the same program, and it then scans with 7 lasers, and it just goes straight through. Now we're asked somebody to come in on Saturdays and Sundays, and they're all got their hands up saying, yes, please, yes, please. So it's changed the whole concept of what was the 9 till 5 job. It's a bit like I'm tonight locking up at midnight because one of the guys is possibly not too well. So I'm happy to have the factory running now 6 in the morning till 12 at night. You get a lot more throughput, but it is that productivity. The difficulty that I've got with the automation is you're getting this de-skilling. In the olden days when we all learned woodwork, it was a hands-on job and it was a skill. Where what we've now got is very, very skilled people. We've just taken on somebody who's got a master's in robotic and automation to do our digital transformation to the next level. But you've then got this other side where the employees, such as working at the big warehouses in Amazon, they've got no skills and they can take them on and drop them straight away because it's got so much automation around them. And that, I think, is the sad side of the automation in some areas. But yes, it's made us productivity very, very high.
Adam, I think you wanted to join in.
You're on mute.
Adam, you're muted, mate.
That's it.
There you go.
I wasn't over sure whether Helen wanted to go before me. Helen, did you put your hand up before me?
I did, and I just had if you don't mind, I just had a question because there's a lot of talk about automation, and I know what Mark just put up with 22nd in world ranking, but that's about robots per employee. Okay, and we've already said automation isn't just about getting robots in to do the job, right? It's the algorithms for spreadsheets, as Angela said. It's the little things that help us do our jobs less boringly, more accurately, and so on. And we just need to be a bit careful that we don't go down the line of automation equals robots equals taking jobs away, right? Because yeah, robots chucking big bits of metal around, great. We don't injure people, and you've got people then managing those robots, but you've also got a whole myriad of other things like in the making the doors, which is not to do with having a robot taking a job. It's to do with something just makes your life a bit easier and makes you more efficient and helps you learn another skill. And that's not to deny that having robots isn't going to potentially get rid of manual labor. And there is definitely a problem about de-skilling, because if we do need someone to make something, we don't have anybody to make anything because they're all computer scientists or robot managers or whatever. But I think we just need to be careful not to go down the route of automation equals robots equals getting rid of people.
Okay, thank you, Adam.
The thing that I was going to add on this is that to drive productivity, we have to have excellence in logistics. So as Helen was just saying there, and how we look at things, generally what we'll do is we'll take a automation of a cycle time or something that we're actually working on. So we'll be focused on this bit, but there's a whole plethora of stuff around it that also needs to be taken into account to drive productivity. And one of the things that we have in the UK is from the infrastructure side. So like Richard said there, he's a small SME competing against a big business. Now, when we grow and we get to that stage where we've outlived our premises that we're in, we've now got to find a bigger premises. Now, the problem is in the UK, we can't find those bigger premises. those going from 50,000 square foot or square meterage into the 100,000. So what happens then? We buy the unit over the road. What does that drive? Efficiency drop, because we've now got to push and pull stuff across the road. So it's a productivity hit. So we have to have excellence in both internally and logistics, operations and logistics. They go hand in hand to drive productivity. So we've got a whole infrastructure thing here. We've got Amazon warehouses being built everywhere. We see them everywhere. Where are the smaller businesses to allow the SMEs, like the manufacturing SMEs, to grow? I've been in conversations where the managing director is stifled because he's going from a 50,000 to 100,000, that then makes a 4 or 5% knock-on effect in his profitability. So he says, I'll stay where I am. Can't do it because the cost of the building's too big because he doesn't need it all. Now stay where I am. That's it. So we've done it, so we've got to get infrastructure right as well, logistics right as well.
And they do keep building warehouses, which are great for storing telegraph poles, but not awfully good for a small business upscaling, who wants a smaller place, a bigger place than they've got, but doesn't need a roller shutter.
Ram, before I get to you, I'd just like to bring Simon in, because Simon's sitting there in Washington, DC. And Simon, I know you're not directly in manufacturing, you're very much in the health sector on data analytics and all that, but I'm just wondering if you got any observations from the US side on what you've been hearing.
Yeah, fascinating. Two or three just immediate thoughts that come to mind in our arena. If you go back 40 years, if you wanted to create a slide deck presentation, you needed people who could draw charts. And you needed people who could analyze it. The first job I had, I worked in a company where the two biggest departments in the company were the people hand entering data, the computers. Anyone who's seen Hidden Figures will know exactly what I'm talking about. And the second largest department was the people who were creating the overhead slides that we used for presentations, because each overhead slide was itself a cardboard picture. Of course, none of those people exist anymore. We now have online business intelligence tools that can take massive data sets automatically out of your spreadsheet and automatically generate 350 slides for you. But it doesn't help you in any sense in interpreting the meaning, but which goes to something that someone else was saying. The other thought, just a quick thought popped into my head when there was a quick mention about automated vehicles. How many lorry drivers are going to be made redundant? Well, in the United States at the moment, there is a shortage of approximately 120,000 long-haul lorry drivers. And my understanding is that it's not a dissimilar number if you look at the EU. There's a massive shortage of long-haul lorry drivers. And so if someone were to come up with an idea where they could generate that kind of volume of automated vehicles, it wouldn't actually replace any people at all yet. In the long term, yes, of course, it probably would. But the whole, I used to work in a spring factory. And the difference between the springs that were made by hand and the springs that were made by machines was the speed with which they did it. The machines were automated. One machine that could make a bed spring could be converted to make a mini little thing that went into some sort of micro switch or something. Same machine, you just set it up differently, it makes a different spring. I think an awful lot of the automation that we're talking about is that kind of thing, just evolved. A lot of the automation we're talking about at the moment is computer managed. The idea of running a machine tool on an algorithm is 50 years old at least. But running factories on machines that are running on algorithms, that's a relatively newer thing. But to me, it seems like it's a straightforward progression of the advances that we've been making for the last 20,000 years. Just
okay, thank you.
Just a brief,
yeah.
Oh, and one other thing that did cross my mind, I mean, and this is a completely different topic of conversation, really. Bill Gates had a very interesting conversation, and this was at one of the World Economic Forums a few years ago. The idea about the economics, the national economics of automation, the suggestion was that we really did need to tax robots, because we tax income and robots don't pay income tax. So there's a very significant societal cost involved in the improved productivity and profitability of industries removing employment. But that's a slightly different topic of conversation.
I can see Richard dialing his accountant now to stop that now. Ram, you wanted to make a point, and I interrupted you to let Simon in.
I actually had a question for Adam and perhaps some other people on here. When Adam mentioned about the fact that there isn't enough room for expansion for factories, does it mean, are we rethinking how we design the industrial development or industrial estates of the future? Is it going to be modular design to help companies expand? Or is it something that we need to think about in terms of rethinking how we shape industrial manufacturing sites of the future?
I think that's a good call, Rob. It's one of those things from a modular building point of view, is that thought process around that. There's definitely, because I come across it too many times now with manufacturers that I deal with that are looking to grow and looking to push, and they can't find the premises. And of course, then you're mixed in with saying, well, okay, I'm in this radius, or this mile radius. If I go outside of sort of like probably, I mean, it used to be probably 10 miles. If I go outside of 10 miles, I start losing my employees because they won't travel out that far. So there's a big knock-on effect.
There was a brilliant place, and I can't remember the name of it now, in Manchester. It was an old mill, and they turned it into a 4-story modular office and manufacturing. And it was basically, you booked a square footage, and the walls were movable, and the utilities all moved around and everything. And then if you wanted some more, and it was available, you just moved the wall out 10 foot, and then you had that much more space without having to relocate. And there are spaces. I mean, in Scarborough, I spoke to an estate agent, and he said the little sort of double garage, triple garage size places, he could sell them, rent them out 16 times over. But he can't sell the warehouses because there's nobody wants. It's too big. You just want incremental growth and be able to have that extra 50 square meters, 100 square meters, whatever, just to grow on.
I'd like
so I think
to
there's a big thing about re-looking at how we do manufacturing facilities.
I'd like to ask Richard just to tell his story about how you managed to stay where you are, because you wanted to stay where you are in your Rochdale facility, but actually other legislation was pressing you maybe to have to move when you didn't want to. Can you tell the story about it's the dust extractor I'm interested in.
So 25 years ago, I started the company, and 10 years ago, we moved premises to what I thought was the perfect premises to answer the questions that you just said. 1.2 acres, 25,000 square foot, but with the ability to be able to build on the outside. So we've expanded on the car park and built 2 very large machines, one of them being a dust extractor. Put the planning permission in. The biomass burner is the first one, Nick. Put the planning permission in for the biomass burner, and because it was literally 10 metres away from Rochdale Canal, which is of national significant importance, everybody just jumped on us and says, you're polluting the atmosphere. What happens if this happens and that happens? You'll kill the fish, you'll damage it. And it was a case of the council literally digging the heels in, and Natural England saying, you're not having it. And that was a simple case of, I'm going to have to move factory. And the cost of moving factory is exactly what you said, Adam. £250,000 to move factory for us. It took 5 years to save up to get the deposit to be able to then physically pay to be able to move. I needed that incremental to be able to then grow. So where I was about to just completely disappear. And that's the reason, Nick, where you'll realise I know the council very well now. And I've obviously got to know them because I needed to get to know them. But the difficulty I then had was when I wanted a dust extractor, we knew from the dust extractor the amount of dust that you blow. And when it blocks up, because it's blowing the dust on the tubes, you then unclip them, dust goes everywhere. The next door neighbours, Hanson Springs, they make springs. We've filled their 200-car car park just with, it looked like Blackpool Beach when we've had disasters. So I knew the council ain't going to buy this one. They put me through the ringer for the biomass burner, there's no way they're going to let me have a dust extractor. And at that time, it was sort of, how do we get, there must be something more automated, more better, more this. And that's when I came across Industry 4.0. So I then spec'd up an Industry 4.0. So I said, these are the 9 pillars. These are the things it needs to be able to do. And they obviously laughed and they said, you've got a big pocket. I said, it doesn't matter what the cost is, either that or close the company down. So a company in America, Ecogate, and the MD was a NASA rocket scientist, which is fantastic. So a rocket scientist then after 6 months came back and said, we think we've got the software, we think we've got it, and it is the first Industry 4.0 dust extractor. We've got predictive maintenance, it will not stop. It monitors everything 24/7. The council doesn't have to have it every year. The LEV test, it is literally doing it 24/7 on 4 channels coming back in. So once again, technology can come out with the answer, which is always good, because obviously that's what we need for climate emergency and jobs and economy and everything else.
I think that's such a great story. But as you say, there must have been a point at which you thought, it's almost so critical. I may have to close down just simply because I can't meet the requirements of the council.
It was checkmate. It was a proper checkmate. I had no move whatsoever. We were just very fortunate that that 3 years passed and they ended up passing it. It's just the dust extractor would have been an absolute no-no. The other reason we got it is because we self-supply our own waste wood. So therefore it's better than taking it off site. So we almost had to do a report to say what we're doing is acceptable. These are the alternatives, and they were. And in the end, they bought it, which is very pleasing, but they wouldn't have bought the second one.
Okay, so we've got 10 minutes left. Anybody got some more thoughts they want to add to this? Roy, good to see you back. Hoping I think your connection may be a little bit better. Great to see that you're in your car. I don't know whether but you were going to mention something about how automation is helping you build your satellites in your Portsmouth facility. I've been there, by the way. It is mind-blowing to go in there and watch these satellites being made for Airbus clients.
Yeah, the reason I'm sitting in the car is my daughter's playing hockey. So if she keeps coming to hockey club, you're going to keep seeing me sitting in my car every Thursday night. Yeah, so our use of cobots. So we've used automated machines for a long time, doing things like pick and place, flow soldering. So we, as well as making whole satellites, we make products that go into satellites. And our first foray into robots is this cobot that we've got. And we're not using it for volume or for productivity reasons. We're using it for quality reasons. So if you can imagine, we have to put very small printed circuit boards that have got very expensive components on them, and we have to screw them down into cases. And we generally use people in the past. And the problem with that is every time they torque a screw, and we're talking M2, M3 screws, these are very small screws, they torque them at slightly different values. And if they over torque them by about ½ Newton meter, then basically they destroy a 20,000 pound circuit board. And sometimes we only find that once we've integrated the whole thing into a satellite, which then costs millions of pounds to correct. So we're actually using the cobot so that it does the torque setting on the screws. And basically we get complete repeatability, because not only does it torque the screws, but it has a torque readback that tells you exactly what torque it's done, which you can never get a human to do. So we're finding all these kind of applications where we can build more quality into the product. Has it led to less people? Well, not really, because we're not a big volume producer, so we don't have a lot of people. What it means is maybe we reallocate them to different roles, different activities, or we just produce more volume with the same number of people. So that's the way we kind of get a bit of a productivity gain out of it. But it's a very different idea to what most people are using robots for. And we're just beginning with it, really, but we're getting our graduates and apprentices working on projects to to actually get these machines working, and we give them a challenge and say, what can you do with this, and let them loose on it, which is not very familiar to Airbus, because we're much more familiar with doing everything by registered process and making sure that 20 pairs of eyes that are probably as old as mine have checked it all out and made sure it's all fine. But we're actually letting loose our youngsters on these things, and they're coming up with some really smart solutions that will really help us in future to maintain that quality, and hopefully, if we get more volume, we can deal with that with the staff that we've got.
We've got 5 minutes left. Sarah, Rachel, neither of you have said anything. I don't know, is that just because you didn't, but please, have you had any thoughts from this, and whether it impacts what you're doing in your business? Rachel, I know that Midas Pattern, a very high quality injection molding company, some of this must have come across in your planning.
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of automation and robotics, we do very little in terms of the true sense of bringing robots in, because quite a lot of what we do is quite specialized, very low volume. But as a lot of people have already stated, the sort of automation that has benefited us through the years is the advancement of, CAD and computer aided machines. We originally employed pattern makers, which were very highly skilled, and they've had to adapt and transfer and work, to moving on to digital platforms. So, for the last 20-30 years, that change has been happening within our industry. And one area, I don't know a huge amount in the automotive industry, but a lot of my experience is within the medical industry, and we talk about robotic surgery there. And certainly on one of the projects which we're involved in, the robotic surgery is there for accuracy. Well, there's two actually. One is for accuracy because it's for brain surgery, and controlled, to sort of less than a millimeter precision. And then the other one helps the surgeon. So rather than, it's a little bit like the cobot that we've been talking about, they're there to actually support the very skilled workforce. So in surgery, a lot of the surgeons will suffer from fatigue if they're having to go into surgery for 6, 8, 10 hours, and they have to be held in a certain position. So these robots actually help them do the very clever work, but they can obviously absorb the fatigue that would come from long surgery, and the surgeon will actually guide the ends in a much more comfortable position. So I think depending which sector you talk about, there are elements of robotics in there, but just perhaps in a slightly different way.
That was really interesting, Rachel. Thank you. And Sarah, does this chime with you at all?
I think a lot of the businesses that we're involved in are still very much traditional, the spreadsheets, the whiteboards. So we even talking about sort of basic sort of ERP software is quite a long shot for them. I was just reminiscing actually when I grew up as sort of training as a secretary, and I had an electronic typewriter, and someone said to me, there's this, it was at the time of working for ICL, there's this office power product coming out where you're just going to be able to type, and you're going to be able to make mistakes and immediately delete without any problem at all. And I thought, gosh, that's such way off. And then when I had that technology, and now when I talk to my children about growing up with that, they can't believe it. So I think there's automation, and somebody I think mentioned the gentleman in the US mentioned about big departments sort of doing sort of basic presentations. I remember that when I sort of first started in marketing and having to pass my work over to another team to do that work. So yeah, I've seen huge changes in the last sort of 25-30 years. So I'm sure some of the smaller businesses that I'm working will over time accept that, there's changes and recognise the benefits that those changes will bring.
Well, Toby, we're coming to a close. You've been listening to a lot of grizzled old timers reminiscing about the tragically ancient past. You're the youngster looking to the future. Are you filled with excitement, anticipation about the future, or are you worried about automation?
I'm not worried about it because they'll always need human workers, and automation or other kinds of engineering disciplines, what I'm looking to go on to after I finish in sixth form. So
oh, well,
it's what
I'm really
I plan
pleased
to spend more time on.
Good. Okay. Well, it's great to have somebody like you on board. Mark, thank you so much for inviting Toby to join us today, because I don't know. Yes, it gives us a chance to remember all those terrible old times, but to hear somebody is so excited about the future, and of course we'll be making that future while we look on in admiration. It's 7 o'clock. I just want to thank you all very much indeed for being with us today. I do hope that you can come next time. As I say, we are going to develop the Kaizen Central LinkedIn page, and I'll be talking to Adam about maybe running this event on LinkedIn as well. So thanks for that, Adam. And that way we can all sort of be in touch with each other without me having to fear GDPR hell and damnation being rained upon me. So watch out for that in the coming days. So thank you, everyone. To anybody who's been watching this on YouTube, I really appreciate you doing so. Thank you, everybody, for taking part. Toby, Mark, everybody else, bless you. See you next time.